This morning, the special session. Lawmakers meeting over the weekend. Can Republicans pass their priorities this time? Two state senators on the program with us, Republican Brian Hughes and Democrat Nathan Johnson. Over the next 3 weeks of the session, do Democrats have any options, or will they be force-fed GOP legislation? One of our questions for State Rep Jessica Gonzalez. Allen West officially in the race for governor, but how is he different from Don Huffines? And Governor Greg Abbott setting new fundraising records. Is he becoming untouchable from conservatives running against him?
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to our viewers across the state. The state legislative machine has fired back up in a special session, but let's first begin with the top political headlines here in Texas. Some big news out of the Texas Senate. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says next year's election will be his last. The Lieutenant Governor has served 2 terms as the number 2 in the state and is running for his 3rd. And State Senator Jane Nelson there in that chamber announced she is not seeking re-election next year. Nelson is a Republican who represents parts of Denton and Tarrant counties in North Texas. She has led building the state budget each session there in the Texas Senate. Congress has some questions for Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush. Federal lawmakers want to know why Houston did not get the latest round of federal aid for Hurricane Harvey. The U.S. House Financial Services Committee wants Bush to testify this coming Thursday. We are a year and a half away from the midterm election next fall, and Democrats are already announcing a challenge to Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne there. She's a Republican who represents Irving, Carrollton, and Southlake. A Marine named Derek Gay just announced his Democratic campaign. Van Dyne, remember, narrowly won her first term by less than 2% of the vote. Let's begin in Austin, though, this morning, and a conservative state senator who is behind some of the most controversial bills of this special session. State Rep Brian Hughes, a Republican from Mineola in East Texas, who spoke to us from the Capitol. Senator Hughes, welcome back to the program. You once again are carrying several big bills in the special session here. Let's take these individually. The first is changes to election law. Democrats in the House effectively killed this during the special session, but not all Republicans were on board with it in the chamber down the hall there. How will this special session version be different from what we saw before?
It's interesting. The bill is not, the provisions of the bill are not aimed at voters who are trying to cheat. They're aimed at vote harvesters and people trying to coerce voters and steal their votes and unduly influence their vote. I mean, the voters are trying to get it right. We want to make sure they're able to cast a ballot fairly and cleanly, and they know the ballot's going to be counted accurately. So it's a good bill, and we're optimistic it's going to pass. A
lot of pushback, though, early on was from Republicans about the Sunday morning changes that were in the Senate bill. Has that been changed in this special session bill?
Jason, I'm glad you asked that. So Senate Bill 1 that I filed says you can do not 5 but 6 hours of Sunday voting. You have to do 6 hours anytime between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. So they can do afternoon, morning, whenever they want to do it.
Senator, what else is different in this bill than you had previously filed?
So there was some provisions in the original bill about poll watchers using cameras, and that got kind of tedious. We weren't sure how that would work practically, so that's out. What we do have, which makes sense, is cameras, a live stream camera in the central counting room. Whenever those ballots are brought in, they're going to be on camera the whole time. Also, the signature process, where they're checking to compare the signatures on those applications for ballot by mail and on the envelopes to make sure they're accurate. That's going to be recorded. You can't see the signature, but you can see who's in there and see that it's being done fairly. So those are some changes that have been made. Again, it's about making sure the process works and making sure it works fairly.
This bill had a hearing on Saturday in the Senate, but when do you expect it might go to the Senate floor for a full vote?
We expect to have that on the floor on Tuesday. We'll have a robust debate. Everyone will have their say. We're going to listen. The bill's going to be debated. We anticipate being on the Senate floor on Tuesday.
You are also once again trying to get a bill passed to punish social media companies who kick off users that violate the rules. You tried this 2 years ago. It didn't pass. You tried it in the last session that ended at the end of May. It didn't pass then too. And the same as voting, Republicans weren't really on board with this in the House. How is this going to be different? What makes you think it might pass this time?
No, the bill the Senate passed in the regular session, this is going to look a whole lot like it. Our bill from last session, 2019, was different. This one looks at the federal law, looks at the federal court rulings. You may have seen that Florida bill just got struck down. This bill is different. We believe this bill will get past the federal courts and will protect Texans' free speech online. We're very optimistic about it.
Senator, how concerned are you that Democrats could walk out of either chamber and break quorum and shut this whole thing down again?
Well, they certainly can. We saw that happen at the end of the last session. As you know, the rules allow the lieutenant governor and the speaker of the House to put a call on the House and the Senate. When they do that, they lock the doors and they send the DPS to arrest the absent members. I don't think we get cuffed or anything, but they bring the members back to preserve a quorum, to restore and preserve a quorum. I don't think that'll be necessary, but it's in the Constitution, it's in the rules, it's there for a reason. Each one of us took an oath. We raised our right hand and swore an oath. We have a job to do, and that means being here, debating, voting. Win or lose, we're here and we vote, and we do our jobs for the people of Texas.
Senator Hughes, we appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Before we get to the other side in the Senate, let's talk about campaign cash for a moment here. Governor Greg Abbott broke his own fundraising record, bringing in $18.7 million just in the last 10 days of June. That means Abbott now has $55 million in cash on hand. What does all the money mean? Let's ask Ross Ramsey, the co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune. Good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well here. You know, $55 million suggests to me that his primary opponents are likely going to have a challenging time trying to get their message through.
I think that number probably looks to like a Mack truck to a mosquito to those other candidates. It's a daunting number. The guy with the highest name ID in the race and with the power of incumbency, who's also popular with Texas voters, has a pile of money, and it just makes that much steeper a hill to climb.
Let's talk about one thing we are not seeing in the special session, and that is power grid reform. But Governor Abbott's kind of going around that. He's asking regulators to do something. Explain what's going on with this.
Well, he kind of did a mission accomplished a few weeks ago when he said that the grid is now in better shape than it has ever been in Texas history. This was after the regular session of the legislature. They got done some things. They didn't get done a lot of things that they wanted to do. And Abbott is taking the tack now that they can do everything that still needs to be done with the Public Utility Commission, the Railroad Commission, and ERCOT, and not with the legislature. That's got some Democrats rankled. It's got the lieutenant governor a little rankled, but that's where he is right now.
And we'll see what happens. Ross, back to you in just a moment. Thank you. Coming up, the other side in the special session, State Senator Nathan Johnson, a Dallas Democrat, and a couple of things that he actually likes in the GOP bill to change election laws. But over the next 3+ weeks of the session, do Democrats really have any options to stop Republicans, or will they be force-fed GOP bills? One of our questions for State Rep Jessica Gonzalez. You're watching Inside Texas Politics. Every week on our program, we let you hear directly from lawmakers themselves. But on our podcast, we get down into the weeds of what is happening and why. So on the latest episode of Y'all-itics, Scott Braddock, the editor of the Quorum Report, spends the day with us sorting out what is happening in the special session and why and who benefits. If your phone is handy, this episode's ready to download this morning here. Turn on your phone's camera, aim it at the QR code on screen. It will take you directly to this latest episode. We began our program this morning with what Republicans want in the special session. Now to the Democratic side. State Senator Nathan Johnson, a Dallas Democrat, took our questions from his office at the state capitol. Senator Johnson, welcome back to the program. Besides refunding the legislature, is there anything on the Senate agenda that the governor wants that you could actually support?
Yeah, he's got a number of things on that agenda, including a 13th check for retired teachers. There's some scholastic instruction regarding family violence. There's a few things in there that are the kind of stuff that we should have achieved in the regular session had we not been arguing about the silly things that we were arguing about.
The Senate bill to change voting laws in the state is less stringent than the one we saw in the regular session. The Sunday voting is expanded by an extra hour. I believe there's no more poll watchers with cameras. What's your reaction to this bill?
Well, I'm glad the bill is not as offensive as it was. I think that most of this election law stuff is in furtherance of a false narrative that we're under some threat of voter fraud when that's been disproven continuously. I think it's a political narrative. However, I am for secure elections. I think everybody is. There are elements of this bill that I think are quite good and reasonable. Are there enough of them to outweigh the unreasonable ones, and will the unreasonable ones come out? My reaction to the changes is highly favorable. I'm glad. The national attention to what's going on here, I think, left no choice but to pull out some of the more egregiously undemocratic provisions of that. Can we get to something that we all agree on? Not likely, but maybe. We're gonna try to work together.
And what's in the bill, because you've picked this apart, what's in the bill that you think is actually a good idea?
Well, for years, I have favored paper trail voting machines. We want some sort of hard backup, not least of which is because when people have some fear that there is voter fraud, let's go back to it and see if there was, let's fix it. And if there wasn't, let's stop the gossip, right? So I think I want some hard measures in there to make sure that we don't have fraud, that we do verify that people are who they say they are. But I think we should make it easy to vote, and there hasn't been a lot of effort on that. We still don't have online voter registration. Why isn't that in there?
In the House, Senator, I know you've been watching this. Democrats said that all options remain on the table to stop the governor's priority list. The only one that I can see that would actually be useful to stop this list is breaking quorum. And physically walking away, but that can only last so long, as you well know. Is that something that Democrats, you think, really are considering?
Nobody wants to do that. We would much rather work with people and get stuff done. It's not like the play, but there are a limited number of things that legislators can do. That's one of them. It's not a favored strategy. And as you said, we can't do that for 18 months. The goal is to work well with people. Every option that's available is an option that's available.
Do you think that will happen?
I don't know. It's not the preferred avenue. I would like us to work together. Already, you've seen the election bill get better, right? I'd like to see all these bills get better. There's stuff in bail reform that can be really great progress with bipartisan agreement. Breaking quorum is an absolute last resort when there's no other choice. And when it happened in the House last session, that's in fact where they were. There was no other choice at that point. I hope we don't get there this session, this special session, because we'd all like to get home and get back to our jobs and our families and doing kind of interim work that we need to be doing instead of here doing stuff that frankly is more about Republican primary messaging than anything substantive that would help the state.
Senator Johnson, we appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Jason. Good to be here.
Remember, it was House Democrats there who walked out at the end of May, killing the elections bill, and that move is partly why there is a special session right now. So what will House Democrats do next? State Rep Jessica Gonzalez is among those Democrats who left the chamber in May. She represents parts of Dallas and Grand Prairie. Representative Gonzalez, welcome to our program here. I want to ask you about the special session. The way I see it, Democrats just don't have a lot of options to stop anything. Am I missing anything here?
You are not missing anything. The Speaker of the House created a new special committee where all the agenda items by the governor, they're going to go through that committee. It's a 15-member committee, and I believe that there are only six Democrats on there.
And once Democrats vote to restore funding for the legislative staff and the legislature, et cetera, is there any reason for Democrats to stick around?
I think that just depends. It depends on how quickly, well, in my opinion, no. Because a lot of the issues that the governor, put on the call are addressing divisive issues, bills that didn't get through the House for a reason, and critical race theory, which did pass, but we didn't go far enough on it. And so we saw what these issues did, and they were very divisive this last session. I think ultimately it just depends on what the process looks like when committee hearings start. And if the same behavior continues, then what happened this regular session, I mean, Democrats have to keep every tool in their toolbox as an option. And breaking quorum or denying quorum very well still continues to be an option that we're considering.
And let's dive into that for a moment, because you were one of the House members who walked off the floor there at the end of the session and broke quorum, killing the elections bill. We've heard you say it. Representative Wally, who is the chair of the Mexican-American Caucus, said it too. But really, how viable is that? Because you'd have to stay gone at least to the end of the 30-day session, depending on when you start. You've got to come back at some point. The governor can just keep calling these, can he?
Yes, from my understanding is that he can continue calling us for 17 special sessions. So every 30 days up until, I guess we would start the next legislative session.
So are you prepared, or you think the House Democrats are prepared to be gone that long?
I think it's definitely continues to be part of the conversation. We just kind of have to wait and see.
And final question here for you too. Is there anything on the governor's agenda that he wants lawmakers to consider that you could find any support for?
And I know that there's one item that references domestic violence, and I'm unclear as far as, and I believe it's a bill that he vetoed that now he wants to go back and address now. Why he vetoed it, it's unclear. But that's probably the only one that I can see me finding, some kind of, a bill that I would agree on. But we've already seen folks trying to, go outside of that, and they've already started filing bills related to, attacking trans kids and focusing on gender modification, and that falling under the definition of child abuse. And so, that doesn't necessarily mean that it will come to the floor, or that that the speaker will recognize that as being within the bounds of the call of the governor. But that is the only portion. I mean, we all really wish that he would have put something on the call addressing the electric grid. That's really what we need to be focusing on.
And we have not seen that yet. Of course, the governor can't add anything that he wants to add during the special session. We're going to watch how this unfolds. But Representative Gonzalez, we appreciate you joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Not every bill this special session is the same as the regular session. There are different lawmakers crafting some of these, and these bills are landing in different committees than before. We'll explain why all this is happening next on the Roundtable.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross Ramsey is back with us from Austin and the Texas Tribune. Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram joins us each week, and so does Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Ross, let's start with you. And the state legislature working yesterday on Saturday to hear some bills. There are 11 things the governor wants the lawmakers to look at. What's back? What is not from the regular session?
Well, I think, the main bill that they're back for is the voting and election bill that failed right there at the end of the session. It was that dramatic thing where the Democrats walked out to block it. That's the first thing up. That's what they were hearing yesterday in Austin in committees. They'll probably get to the floor of both the House and the Senate with that legislation this week. And then they'll go through some other stuff that includes some red meat issues. The governor wanted to touch on transgender athletes, some things like that. And a couple of things that the Democrats might have wanted, as you found in your interview earlier in the show.
And Bud, we've noticed that there are some different lawmakers writing some of these controversial bills. They've been assigned to different committees. What's the point of this? Do they expect a different outcome?
Well, it just, very gentle way of saying, let's give this to someone else to carry the ball in the House. The Speaker created a special committee on constitutional rights and gave Trent Ashby the election bill this time around. It's just a little way of saying, Briscoe Kane, Jessica Gonzalez, you argued a lot. It was a lot of fun, but you didn't get it done. And let's try to get a committee together to get it passed.
And of course, Bernadine, the question I've been asking the two Democrats we had on the program earlier, Jessica Gonzalez and Nathan Johnson, is what play do Democrats have, if any?
At this point, they don't have any. Because remember last week when we had Representative Collier on, she said that they don't have any numbers to carry any legislation, so they have to be able to work with the Republicans. But the Republicans want to come out more bipartisan with certain issues. But Democrats, they don't have anything, and then they're not. Some of them are not open to walking out again.
Yeah, of course, that seems like the only real play they might have. Let's shift off, Ross, to what happened a week ago today after our program aired last Sunday. Allen West joined the Republican primary for governor. How is he different at all from Don Huffines? They seem kind of cut from the same cloth.
Well, they are, and I think both of them were depending on Trump voters, and Donald Trump has endorsed Greg Abbott. I think that takes a lot of the carpeting out of that apartment. I think it's going to be very difficult for him. He doesn't have nearly as much money, obviously, as the governor, not as much money as Don Huffines. He's never been on a ballot in Texas, and he's relatively new here. I think this is a long shot.
Bernadine, I want to ask you the same question with them as well, too. Do you see a real difference that Republicans might have with those two?
Well, one thing that he has, West is very, very combative. And if the diehard Republican conservatives want someone who they think will fight, West is their person, because he's very combative. He's not loyal to anyone but West. So that's the difference, and that's someone that they might like.
And Bud, I want to get, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Bernadine. Bud, I want to get in the weeds with you on the last question here. State Senator Jane Nelson, we mentioned at the beginning of the program, she is not seeking re-election next year. She's someone who is pretty powerful behind the scenes, writing the state budget each year. How big of a deal is her loss? Why is she leaving?
You know, her retirement from Flower Mound, there are a lot of people who say that she's the most powerful woman, Republican woman, the most powerful woman in the history of the legislature. The Senate, leading the budget and deciding how money is going to be spent in the state of Texas. Obviously, we had a woman governor, but maybe not such a powerful leader, among Republican women. What Jane Nelson wants to do is step out. She's been there a long time. There's a lot of young people there now. There was a time when we thought Jane was going on to Washington, but we don't really know what her plans are. It looks like she wants to just kind of settle in and stay home, but we'll see what happens, because there's about 30 people who want that seat.
I bet so. And Ross, what is the reaction to her departure? Because it was kind of surprising.
Yeah, she's been here 30 years. She was, as Bud said, she'd risen to the top of the Senate, and the question was always, does she go anywhere from here, or is this the valedictory? And I don't know what she's going to do. She's had a great career. She could go further if she wanted to.
Bernadine, final word.
I think she's going to go further, because she did say that she's going to stay in state politics. So what else how can she stay in it other than running for another office?
We shall see, guys. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as well. We're back again next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics. Until then, have a good week.